Hello and good evening and welcome to Montague Island Books, number 19 we're at now. And I'm very delighted to have two lovely guests with us this evening. Just to tell you a little bit about our author guest. She lives near. I got the biography. I normally use Amazon, but I got it this time from Hobeck Books from their website, and it's a lovely written biography. So, the author lives near the sea. She walks a dog or two for the Cinnamon Trust, and is owned by Little Ernie, a cat who spooks at invisible things. I think we've all met cats like that. She's an avid reader of crime fiction. She's long been a fan of The Private Detective, from Chandler to McDermid, from Grafton to Galbraith. This combination of facts may explain why her novel contains a PI, a peer, and a pet. A lot of P's in there, and a ghost girl in need of help. Over the years, she's worked in international logistics, customer service, banking, and education, but she's always been a writer. Like many others who doubt themselves, few of her tales have seen the light of day, despite the creative writing core of her OU bachelor's degree, and well done that. Being a current student of a degree at the OU, I got an idea what you're going through. But recovery from a severe bout of depression a few years ago led her to reevaluate her priorities. And then she came across the UEA's amazing MA Creative Writing Crime Fiction. I'll ask you more about that later, because I've heard of somebody else and it's been on the tip of my tongue all day, but I've heard somebody else that did it, another popular author, and I can't think who it is, but you might know a few. Anyway, she's ever the learnaholic, and the idea appealed to her. Write a whole novel while studying crime fiction. Yes, in a seize-the-day moment, she applied. She was thrilled and terrified when offered a place. Fueled by huge mugs of tea and a lake of Prosecco, she wrote the book and achieved the MA. Congratulations on that. Now her world is all murder and mayhem, and she's very happy with that. And that's a great positive biography. Anyway, a very big welcome to Wendy Turbin. Good evening, Wendy.
Thank you very much for that, and good evening, and thank you once again for inviting me on, because it's lovely to be here, and I do hope that anybody listening to that who has aspirations to be a writer will take some inspiration of their own by the fact that I've come to this over a lifetime of being a writer, but only very recently having my very first novel published, which is a great thrill. And I do credit the UEA's master's program very much for getting me over the top of that hill, because it is a bit of a push to get there. But it's been a lifetime in the making. And for anybody who does write, especially in secret, without showing you, I'm with you there. I'm with you in spirit.
I think there's a lot of people like that. So tell us a little bit, just before you go on to tell us about your book, tell us about the UEA and how that process went once you got over the shock of being accepted, as you say. How did that progress?
Well, I think everybody on the course, they take 12 people a year on the part-time course, so it's over 2 years. And it's done mainly through residentials, which are quite short, but then there's a lot of getting together with your cohort and critiquing each other's work. And it is the most terrifying of processes, especially when you're on one of those residentials in a classroom to begin with 11 people you don't know, plus tutors, and they've all read the piece that you've submitted, and then, right, so let us tell you what we think. But it's a very good introduction to what it's like in the writing world, because everybody will have a view, and editors, publishers, agents, everybody will have a view. Readers have a view, and you really have to learn how to handle it and what to do. And it's great for that. And it's the best 2 years fun I think I've ever had with writing. Everybody was so motivated, so helpful. I think writers and writers in the making are lovely people in general. They are so cohesive. They try and get everybody to do the best work they can do, and it's fabulous. And University of East Anglia's program is fantastic. I can't recommend it enough, really.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I think there is something about authors and writers that do seem to sort of club together and help one another in all the groups like UK Crime Book Club and my own sort of book club, Bookends. You know, they all try to sort of help in. Where I think if you went to any other occupation, or even like musicians, they will jam together, but they don't often go in the studio and help one another, you know, like authors tend to do. So there is that special connection, and also the connection with the readers. You know, a lot of the authors seem very well connected. Where look at musicians and things like that, they're a bit more standoffish. So, you know, it's...
Yeah, I think perhaps with writing, particularly writing full-length fiction, you know, only half the process is the writing and the other half is the reading. And we are readers as well.
Yeah.
So we know what that feels like. And you bring your own self and your own meaning into what you're reading. So it's never the same experience for two people. And everybody's opinion, you know, has validity from what they're saying and their perspective. So it is quite a collaboration, really. It's also very tricky for a writer because you're never quite sure whether what you think you're saying is what somebody's hearing, because you can't tell. And unless you speak to readers, you can't tell, which is why they're so important. So talk to us, people.
That's it. And I think also it's one of those where as a writer, you will have a voice and probably a picture of your main characters, but you will probably speak to readers and they've got totally different ideas of what the characters would be like, or who they would have portraying them in a film, or, you know, anything like that. So that's great. Anyway, the main reason we're here is to talk about your book, and I can see it's that very nicely product placement beside you.
I've been told by so you always have it on camera.
So tell us a little about it then, Wendy.
Well, I'm not going to tell you all about it because I'd like people to buy it and read it. That would be great. But what it is it's a private detective mystery. And the publishers describe it as a jigsaw puzzle of a crime novel with a paranormal twist. And the paranormal twist is, as you will see from some of my book choices later, I kind of like being in a fantastic world in some ways. And although Sleeping Dogs is grounded very much in this world, especially the small town seaside world, it features a detective who is not the best detective in the world, but she does have either an advantage or a crossed pair, depending on how you look at it, of being kind of prompted and hired, if you like, by ghosts. The ghost in question, of all my ghosts, they don't speak, so it's never that easy. You can't ask them what they want. You have to work it out, and she has to work it out from what they do, what happens when they're around, and they're very limited in what they can do. And she's never quite sure whether they're really doing anything anyway, or whether it's just connections in her mind with what she's learned and putting things together, which is very deliberate because I wanted people to be able to kind of read it either way, really. But she sees ghosts, and in Sleeping Dogs, one of the first things that happens is that she goes to visit a new client who is worried about her husband possibly being blackmailed. And in the course of that, when she's in the house, she sees the ghost of a young girl, an adolescent girl, who she suspects has been the victim of foul play. And from then on, her focus is on solving the mysteries. Obviously, she has to do the ones that pay the bills, but the ghost ones have the most emotional impact on her. And in amongst that, there are also some fun elements. Doesn't sound like fun so far, does it? But it kind of is. Bear with me. So what also happens is that she sees other ghosts, and some of those ghosts, and this is where the kind of puzzle comes in, because you kind of don't see at the beginning how these things tie together. But some of the ghosts, being animal ghosts, are rather more exuberant than the human ones. And I think somebody asked me the other day, you know, why are the ghosts sort of not so serious? And I think it's because animals probably don't know they're dead. So they carry on doing the things that they did in life. And they are, in the main, pets, and they're quite fun, and they do things, but they are things that contribute to how Penny Wiseman, my detective, solves the mysteries that she has to solve to find out what it's all about and what she can do, because, you know, ultimately that's her goal, is to put the world to rights. So that's
very intriguing. Very intriguing.
It's the first of a series, so, you know, watch this.
Great. Yeah, first of a series. So when's book number 2 going to come out?
I don't have a confirmed date yet, so I'm not going to say.
Is it written? Is it all?
It's in the process of being written to the point of being readable by someone else. I have what I term a dirty draft, which is, you know, just a mess of typos and bits written and bits that say, oh, do this here, and then I kind of look at what I've got and try and work out how to tell this story. So I've told myself the story. Now I'm kind of working on presenting it, mainly to the publishers who would like to see it. So that's my goal.
Great, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, that's right. And the book that's out at the moment, where can people get hold of that?
They can get hold of it through, dare I say, Amazon, because that for most people is the easiest way, probably. But if you don't like Amazon, and I know a lot of people don't, you can also buy it direct from publishers, or you can order it through bookshops. It's available in paperback or ebook, and other ebooks apart from Kindle are available through the publishers. So it's hobeck.net if you want to find the publishers, and they will be very happy to hear from you. And if you are on Amazon and Amazon Prime, then it is Kindle Unlimited. You can read it there as well. So that's all to the good. Wonderful. So do, you know, have a dip in and see what you think. It's not. I think it's $2.99 as an ebook. And Amazon changed the prices of the paperback from time to time, so I don't quite know. It's somewhere about the £9 mark, I think.
Great. And any sort of views in the future of an audiobook version or anything like in the pipeline?
Strange you should ask that. Has somebody given you a hint?
No.
Who knows? Yes, there is an audiobook in the offing. Again, I don't have a date, but I gather it's pretty imminent, and it is read by the most wonderful person who is an actress and an author in her own right, who is Judy Dakin, who was also on the UEA course. So, wow. There, and she is fantastic as an actress, and her voice is amazing, and she has done the audio version.
Great. I always ask about the audio version because I know I've not really got into the audio side of it. For me, I like a book on a Kindle or a proper book, but I know a lot of people really are into, obviously, especially visually impaired, as really into audiobooks. So they're always like, don't forget to ask when the audiobook's out, you know, so.
Yeah, it's exciting to have an audiobook because to hear someone else reading your work, it is an insight into another reader, really. And Judy, the first thing she did for me, just as a fun thing, she read one of my short stories that I did for Hobeck, and actually that's available on their website as well to have a listen to. And it made me laugh, and I thought, I know what's coming, and she makes me laugh. This is a great person. This is a great voice for my detective, because quite a lot of the book is actually in the first person viewpoint of Penny Wiseman. There is another point of view as well, which is third person, but to hear somebody kind of produce her voice, and it wasn't the voice I hear in my head, as I'm sure you're aware, but it was wonderful, and she made me laugh with her kind of intonation of how she was looking at things, and it was brilliant, which is why I was really pleased when Hobeck agreed to ask her to do the audio.
Brilliant.
So I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm sure many people will be waiting for that one. Now, your guest has been waiting very, very patiently in the sidelines. So perhaps you would like to tell us a little bit about your guests and your connection.
I will be delighted to do so. I would like to introduce Antony Dunford, who is my guest this evening. He and I met on the same UEA course. you never get rid of these people. They're there in your lives forever. But we kind of clicked because we share a bit of a sense of humour and a love of funny things. And also he helped me enormously with Sleeping Dogs. His viewpoint was just so clear and so good. He's one of the best editors I've come across, even though that's not his day job because he's an author. So he's absolutely invaluable, and I think we got on fairly well, didn't we, over the lake of prosecco, on and off over the course of the year. And quite a lot of red wine. Yes, yes, there was some of that. There was even an occasional cup of tea. So we all of wine, but I think wine and hangovers do bring people together. Going into the master classes at the university, wishing we hadn't had perhaps that last class, was a good experience. And he's a wonderful author in his own right, also a debut author. His book just came out. It's called Hunted. He'll tell you more about it, I'm sure. It's wonderful. The principal character is just amazing. Love her.
Great.
Good
evening, Anthony.
Good evening, Joe. Good evening, Wendy. Thank you very much for having me, Joe. It's a real
No
pleasure
problem.
to be
It's a
here.
pleasure, and it's nice that I think this is the first time in what did I say, 19 shows. It's the first one where we've had two authors on, so it's very. Oh no, but with one we had a mother and daughter, and they were both authors. So no, it's the second one. Just remembered then, it just came to me. But anyway, tell us about yourself, Anthony, and about your sort of connection with Wendy and your book.
Certainly, I'm Antony Dunford. I'm from Bradford. My mother was born in St Anne's and my father in Scholes near Cleckheaton. So I'm half Lancashire, half Yorkshire, which I know is very important to some of your audience. I went to the same secondary school as David Hockney. I know Malcolm Hollingdrake on your previous one went to the same primary school as David Hockney, so keep the links there.
Connection.
Yeah, and I'm in Ilkley at the moment, so I'm just down the way. Met Wendy on the UA course. You asked earlier who else had been on it that you might have heard of. I think you're possibly thinking of Mark Whiteman, who wrote Waking the Tiger.
Could be, because I've read that book.
You read that, yeah. He was in the second cohort. Wendy and I were in the third. But Harriet Tice, Trevor Wood, Jennifer Stone.
Trevor Wood it was, because he was on an interview the other day. I think it was Sam Brownlee from UKCBC, and he mentioned it. That's the one.
Yeah, you can't get away from Trevor at the moment. He's everywhere. He's winning everything. His novel's fabulous. It's all success.
Got to get him. Have a word with him and give him a nudge, because we've got to get him on the show.
Drop him a note. No problem. And yeah, so Wendy and I spent the 2 years doing the UEA, the three-day residentials a year, and the final thing you do in your the dissertation for the MA is a novel, and the outcome of Wendy's is sitting right next to her, and mine's the one that was also published by Hobeck, Hunted, and we. It's not part of the course, but we chose to buddy up a number of the students so that we would read each other's completed novels to give feedback ahead of it being submitted. And I think I read 5 of the others, and I'd read them sitting at the kitchen table while my other half was sitting at the other end of the kitchen table working. And I had to leave the room when reading Wendy's because I laughed out loud so often I was too distracted. So whilst she balances superbly quite serious and dark topics with a genuine humour, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Judy's audiobook version of it, because Judy's got such a sense of timing and she's such a fabulous actress. That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Great.
Tell us a bit about.
Sorry, Wendy, go on.
I was just going to say, tell us a bit about Hunted as well, because
that's what I was going to ask next. Yeah.
Sure. My Hunted is it's Hobeck as well. It's set in Africa. It's about conservation, rhinos, poachers, and the principal character is a former Norwegian Special Forces woman who has left the army and joined her brother, who runs a conservancy in Kenya, where she's one of the guards protecting northern white rhinos against poachers. Yeah, rhinos, even on my sleeve. And then there's a series of events that lead you from something that was people standing around watching animals to quite hopefully pacey thriller that chases from this conservancy in Kenya through the rest of Kenya into Malawi, back up to Tanzania, and into Kenya again. And it's
and find some amazing characters along the way, some of whom also have little bits of humour that had me laughing. So in amongst the really kind of thrilling, you know, racing stuff, you're kind of what's going to happen, what's going to happen. Every now and then you're going to character say something that just makes you stop and chuckle.
That's great. And where did the connection with Africa come in, Anthony?
It was a completely random thing, because the first novel I started writing at UEA was set in Baildon, and it was a bit of an Agatha Christie locked room mystery set in a pub at between Baildon and Shipley. And then that changed a little bit after I got feedback from helpful people going, "What on earth is that all about?" And I came up with one of our tutors, William Ryan, suggested I needed a big bad villain. So I came up with a big bad villain, and then I came up with a backstory for the protagonist, who originally was a Methodist minister with no real special forces background. And the backstory involved her being in Africa. And then my next tutor in the second year, Henry Sutton, said, "Well, why not write that instead of what you're actually writing?" So it came out of a backstory, and the backstory itself was inspired by the novel, well, not novel, it's a non-fiction book written by Mark Carwadine and Douglas Adams. And it was one that Douglas Adams said it was the book he wrote that he was most proud of. And when he said that, I'd never even heard of it. So I had to go read it straight away. And it's basically them wandering around the world, looking at very endangered species under the title, "This is the last chance to see them, because the next time you come looking, they'll be gone." And one of those species was the northern white rhino, who at the time there were about 20 living in the wild in the Garamba National Park in Democratic Republic of the Congo, and they've since been wiped out in the wild, and there are now only 2 left in captivity. So that species gone from roaming all of Africa to only 2 individuals caught me as just a symbol for many things that you could hang a story off.
Yeah. Great, really interesting. And so tell us where people can buy the book, and where they can contact you.
The books are the same as Wendy. So Hobeck are principally digital publishers, so Amazon and Kindle is the main way. You can only buy the paperback on Amazon and on hobeck.net, the paperback from there. And if you wanted a signed copy, you order it through the hobeck.net website and just put a note in saying, "Please, could you get a signed copy sent?" Okay. And one will be on its way.
That's handy to know, because I know a lot of people, particularly during lockdown, were like, "Well, yes, I want a paperback, but I want a signed one." And with obviously a lot of people, that was difficult. But if it's through the publisher, then I imagine that makes it a little much easier. And have you got a copy to hand to show us?
I actually don't, because I'm not at my house. I'm at my other half's house, and all my stuff's there. And unfortunately, Wendy, when she asked me to do this, I was already here and hadn't prepared. I've only got, I think, 2 of the books that we're going to talk about with me, unfortunately.
No worries, that's fine.
I'm going to try and show it on Kindle, but I've done this before and it doesn't. I can't show it.
It doesn't sort of have the same quality, does it, from the Kindle?
No, it doesn't. I'm
close too much, but
I can have a go from Amazon. Let's see if this will work.
Just so as it puts in people's minds what to obviously
remind you.
Yeah.
Is that? Oh no!
No, that's the first page. By the looks of it.
As soon as you click on the picture, it goes into the first page.
I think you've got to right click on the picture, but anyway, no worries. We've got an idea, and people know it's available on the Hobeck website and on Amazon, both of the books. There we go. That's great. Yeah, super. That's wonderful. So now you're both here this evening, as I'm sure you're aware, to visit our little imaginary island off the coast of Cumbria, which is Montague Island. Now, the name of the island, for any of you who have read the Mike Craven books, or M.W. Craven, as I should correctly call him, the island appears in one of his books, but I won't give any spoilers out on that. But that's where the name comes from. So as you go on your travels, you will find when you get on the island a Kindle with an imaginary set of the N.W. Craven books to keep you company, as well as your own books. So we will discuss, first of all, the 7 books that you're going to take. Wendy, what is the first book that you will take with you?
Right, these are in no particular order, so we'll just see how they come out. But the first one I'm going to take, and it is on the theme of humour, I think. I was looking through and thinking that I don't pick all crime, but there's a crime in nearly all of them, so they're kind of crime books. But the first one is Good Omens, which is the Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman book that they wrote in collaboration, which was, I think, recently on BBC and was absolutely hilarious. And I chose it because it is a very dire look at the world and its faults through the lens of good humour and a belief that somehow humanity will muddle through. And I love that. I love Terry Pratchett books anyway. He always makes me laugh. And I thought on a very chilly day in Cumbria, I might want something to warm the cockles of my heart. Definitely. And that would do nicely. And it's one of those things that it's so layered because there are so many references to religion and different cultures and different ideas, and I just thought you can just keep rereading it. I think I've reread it 3 times already, but I could reread that probably every week for the rest of my life and still find something in it new. So
right, I love the idea of that, and love the idea of the message. Whatever you chuck at us, we'll muddle through. A bit of positivity and a bit of humour with it. So yeah, love that choice. So that's your first one to go in the suitcase. So Anthony, what's yours going to be?
Mine, I've gone back to one of the earliest adult books I consider that I read. I mean, when I was in Harrogate at the Theakston's Festival a few years ago, somebody said, "What was the first crime novel you read?" And the lady sitting next to me said, "It was Enid Blyton." I thought, oh, of course they were. It was Famous Five. They were all crime novels. Never thought of that. Yeah. And I'd read all those, but when I started going to school in Bradford, we get the bus, and I was walking down with a mate of mine called Steve, and he was reading with his mum Lord of the Rings. And he came down every morning with the story of what had happened the night before, and he was hooked and I was hooked. So I got some money for Christmas and I bought Lord of the Rings. I was 9 and I started reading it, and I rattled through it by Easter, so 4 months later. I was about 2/3 of the way through, and then I managed to leave the book at my grandparents in Exmouth, and we didn't go back until the end of summer. So and then I picked it up and finished it, which I thought was one of the greatest achievements of my life. The book was bigger than me. I had a single volume edition, and I absolutely loved it. But as a writer, it's the world building that has always stuck with me. He creates something so meticulous and so thorough. I know it took him 17 years to write, but it was just wow. The internal consistency of it was wonderful, and loved it. I've read it several times.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Also, you just mentioned Theakston's. Are both of you going to Harrogate this year, or are you giving it a miss, bearing in mind with?
Not this year.
I've not booked anything yet because I was waiting to see what might happen. But we have another member of our UEA cohort who's coming over from Switzerland to go to it, whether it's on or not. So I am going to meet up with her, but I will go to things if depending on what happens between now and then.
Yeah, that's it. I think they've got weekend packages out at the moment, but I don't think they've released any of the sort of daily passes and what have you, because they don't know what's happening. So I think they're waiting to see how the main packages go. But there are quite a few. I think Trevor actually was one of the people who said that he's going no matter what. He's
shortlisted for the main prize, isn't he?
So he's got to go, hasn't he? Yeah.
Prize.
Said, well, we'll go and we'll just go and sit around the pub table if need be.
Yeah, it's only 20 miles away, so I can.
Yeah. What about you, Wendy? Will you be there?
I won't be, unfortunately. It is a bit further trek for me, so it's not somewhere that I can pop in for the day. And because of the situation at the moment, and not knowing whether it was on or off, and I have other commitments as well, so it was just too much juggling to try and do it. But I've sort of promised myself that next year I'll try and go to everything. So I'll just spend the year from one to another. So that's fine.
just brought me up with a question there, actually, thinking about the pandemic and things being cancelled and everything. Had you both written your books before the pandemic or during?
Before, yeah.
Yeah, I'd certainly got a draft before. I mean, I completely rewrote it after the deal with Hobeck, after getting feedback from Matt Bird, who did an editorial view, and 60,000 of the 90,000 words changed. But yes, I had it before.
Wow.
Yeah, I was editing through the pandemic, but it did change. I mean, the rather wonderful Jenny Parrott had a lot to say about mine, and it was really, really helpful. But the basic structure didn't change that much for me, but it did still get a lot of polishing and a lot of work. And that all happened through the kind of, when was it, kind of April, May time. So that was when actually we were all kind of going, what is going on, and what's life going to be like? This is kind of weird, but it'll all be over by the summer, right?
Yeah, that's right, of course.
Yeah.
Which summer we didn't say, but
we never said. So, but yes, and it's quite interesting because now I'm writing as I said, the second one, and currently, and this might change, but currently it is set last summer. So we do have it's in that kind of rather the glory days of early July, when we thought that things were going to be the end was in sight and things were opening up, and so at the moment it's set there. But I'm just wondering how irritating it's going to be in 2 years' time if somebody picks it up, and if it is then more in the past. Does anybody want to be reminded? And there is a bit of the plot that kind of feeds into it, and I'm thinking so probably take some editorial advice on that one. So
that'll be interesting. Yeah, that'll be interesting, because I know some people are saying, I will. Maybe not done it yet, but they're thinking, I'll have to do a book about the pandemic just because of history and everything else. And then others are saying, whoa, no way, I'm staying well away from that. I'll just jump a year or
but we don't know how many years you've got to jump, do we? And I think this is possibly a bit of an issue, and because my my Detective Penny's world is very much a real world. It's based on the real world, even though it has these kind of it has ghosts, what can I say, but it is based very much on sort of small town seaside, and for a seaside resort in summer, the pandemic has been devastating. So and not only because the businesses obviously had to close, but actually with what happened when they opened up, because people flooded to places like ours, so it was quite scary. But I just don't know how much of that needs to be in a fictional world. So
it'd be interesting, because it's one of them where if you're saying, well, it's 2021, you can't really gloss over it, 2020 or 2021, but it's going to give off as a lot of big challenges over the next probably few years, to be honest. But anyway, taking you away from the subject there and getting on to other things. So Wendy, what's your second book going to be?
Well, as we didn't collude, my second one was a certain Lord of the Rings.
Great minds.
I'm going to tell you a little story about why I picked Lord of the Rings, because all the reasons Antony said about it being brilliant, that's a given. But I first came across it when I was in my teens, and I was on an exchange visit through my school, and I went to Sweden, and I was in Stockholm. And the family I was staying with were absolutely lovely, and I was an avid reader at the time, and it was for, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks I was there. Still don't speak any Swedish, I think I could say hedgehog, and that was the only word I know. Yeah, random word. So I ran out of reading material, but fortunately, a lot of Scandinavia has a lot of English reading material, and the people I was staying with were lovely. But they said, well, do have a look at our bookshelves, because there are some things in English there that have been translated or whatever. And I found Lord of the Rings, and of course, wonderful. That was it. I don't think I spoke to anybody for about 3 days, because I just kind of went into it. It was dreadful trying to get me out of it. But it did mean that for several years afterwards, I was firmly convinced that he was Swedish, because that's what and it wasn't until I was about 18 and somebody said something about his background, and I went, hang on a minute, that can't be. because I was convinced I'd read it in translation, and they didn't translate it into Swedish. Rather, he was never very happy with it, and it was retranslated in about 2005. So unhappy with the translation originally, because I don't know why, but it sort of didn't come across the way he wanted it to. But I was firmly convinced that I'd read a Swedish book in English translation, so that was quite funny. But I love the world building. I mean, this whole kind of universe it's just fabulous, and mythical beast, and it's got a dragon. I mean, I just love that. I'm complete.
Great.
Yes, I'm a dragon fan, super fan. I don't know if they were real, I'd be there being willing to be eaten, because they just overwhelmingly much.
Just to be in the presence of the dragon. Yeah, that's great. Well, it's interesting that you've both chosen the same book. Yeah.
I was going to be cheeky and ask for, because of the world building as well, I was going to ask for Game of Thrones, but only if I could have the lot, including the ones he hasn't written yet. And then I thought that might be a bit cheeky.
Some people have sort of said, well, you know, can I take the full works of Agatha Christie or whatever? Yeah. So, you know, I get a condensed version for the Kindle or something. So people have tried tricks like that before. So Antony,
try and push it a little bit further. Don't we?
Yeah. Well, just. Can we take a library with us? Yeah.
Well, on Kindle, of course.
Of course.
E-readers, other e-readers available. Yes, it's a good idea. But the rules were the rules, and I thought, no, I can't say that.
But we know what you were thinking. That's right. So, Antony, what's your second book?
The second one's a bit like that, in that it's one book, but it could have been many, which is Code of the Worcesters by P.G. Wodehouse. And there are about 20-something, 24, 25 Bertie Wooster novels, and they're all exactly the same. They've got the same plot. A friend or an aunt asks Bertie to do something ridiculous. In this case, it's an aunt asks him to go and sneer at a cow creamer, which obviously every day. And then craziness ensues. He ends up getting engaged to somebody he doesn't want to be engaged to. But the reason I picked this one is because there is a little bit at the start of it where Bertie himself mulls on the difficulty of writing a sequel where you've got the same characters. And I just want to read this little paragraph, because I think with Wendy and I both writing sequels at the moment, it's quite apt. A thing I never know when I'm starting out to tell a story about a chap I've told a story about before is how much explanation to bung in at the outset. It's a problem you've got to look at from every angle. I mean to say, in the present case, if I take it for granted that my public knows all about Gussie Thinkmottle and just breeze ahead, those publicans who weren't hanging on my lips the first time are apt to be fogged. Whereas if, before kicking off, I give about 8 volumes of the man's life and history, other bimbos who were so hanging will stifle yawns and murmur, old stuff, get on with it. I thought was apt.
Think about.
very, very apt, that, isn't it? Yeah, really get you thinking. So so that's something for you both to mull over as you write the second book in the series. So that's great. So Wendy, what's your book number 3 going to be?
Right, book number 3. Which one shall I pick? Because these aren't in any particular order. I'm going to go with a real crime book, I think, next. And I'm going to go for Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean. And the reason I've gone for that is because although I have read it and I know the story and I know how it ends, which sometimes with a crime book, that's it, you know, you've got it now. But actually, as a psychological study of someone under immense duress, I think it is so skillfully done that I would love to spend time really taking it line by line to see how some of that clever impression has been created so convincingly. I think it's one of the books I've read most recently that I have really gone into and seen things through the character's eyes, and I'm trying very hard not to give anything away, because if people haven't read it, I don't want to give it away. But the central character is under duress, and you see a lot of things that are done where you would expect the reaction to be screaming and tearing of hair and high, hysteria. And this character has been so conditioned that is not the reaction. But as the reader, there were times when I was screaming and tearing my hair, thinking this is just too awful to contemplate. But it was not about showing me how awful it was. It was because the character didn't think so, I think. And I want to go back and just see how cleverly that was done, because it was amazing. And I'm not going to say anything else about it. It twists and turns, and there are things that happen. It's a psychological thriller. Things go on, and things are unexpected, which is also done incredibly well. But I think just as a psychological profile, it's absolutely wonderful. So well done, Mr.
Oh yes, I've heard a lot of good things about that, and it is on my TBR mountain, so to speak. But I do like a good psychological thriller, and I like the idea of the story. So yeah, I'll definitely have to edge that up the mountain a little bit, I think. And
it's well worth it. I read it recently as well, Joe. And
is that your next choice?
No, it's not my next choice.
Oh yeah, so I'll look forward to reading that one. So Anthony, what's your book number 3?
Number 3 is called What Kind of Girl? And I think I've got a photo for this one. Let's see if that works.
Oh yeah, that works. Yeah, very clear that, yeah.
Caroline Cook's here. It's a memoir rather than a novel. And Caroline she's born in Malawi and now lives in Boston in the United States, where she's a teacher. But it's about her growing up and just memories of her childhood, but about the pressures on her to be a traditional Malawian woman. And the reason it's what kind of girl is because that's what her mother keeps saying to her. What kind of girl doesn't want to learn to cook? What kind of girl doesn't want to dress in traditional clothes and that sort of thing? And I loved it because it was, there are things that she was experiencing as a girl growing up in Malawi, and she's about 30 now, so I guess 2000s, versus some of the experiences I remember of growing up in Bradford in the 80s. The universality of the human things about pressures to conform, desires to do something different, to follow your dreams. I just thought it was I just loved it. It's very short, so if it gets anyone wants to read Pile, it's quite easy to do. And there is another one coming out. But after I read it, I put a review on Amazon and Goodreads, which Caroline saw and dropped me a note to say thank you. Right. And we've chatted a bit, and there will now be a character in the sequel to Hunted that bears a startling similarity to Caroline Coetzee, because there was a character in the first one who went to Malawi, and I made a connection and talked it through with her, and she's like, yeah, okay, have a go.
Right.
There is something like stealing from real life. Yeah. It's fabulous as a writer, isn't it?
Well, hopefully it'll be a credible character if it's based on a real character.
Yeah, and it shows how well you were connected with her book if it's sort of bled into yours, so to speak, into your her fact into your fiction. So
yeah,
that's really interesting sort of shift in that one. That's great. So we're now on to book number 4. So the suitcase will start to be filling up a little. So what's yours book, Wendy?
This is where I'm going to go, detective fiction, because this is my first love of reading, and it's Agatha Christie for me all the time. I love Agatha Christie, but the difficulty with Agatha Christie is most of the novels, I've read them all, I know what happens, and they are written very much to be, that's it. I know people study them for years and, great. But actually, for me as a reader, I read it. And if I remember who done it, once I've kind of seen how that came about and how she's done it to me as a reader, that's it. I don't really want to delve too much. So I'm thinking, well, what can I do? So I went looking to see what I could find. And I found a collection called the Miss Marple collection, but it's actually 55 short stories.
Wow. Some
of which feature Miss Marple. There's a Miss Marple 13, I think, which sort of come in. But a lot of them I've never come across. These are new to me. And these were ones she had printed from the 1920s onwards in different publications, and I don't know them, so I've got a treasure trove. And I had to stop myself from carrying on reading last night because I could have just gone and read the lot. And I thought this would be, because I have a shockingly bad memory, probably, I don't know how long I'm on the island for, but I think I could
forever.
probably read them, and then, you know, give me 6 months, I could probably read them again, and I'll have forgotten quite a lot of and they are little gems. They are really off. And I thought, oh, these are great. They're just little emotional hits, stories, which I think a short story needs to be. And I love them, and I'm a great Christie fan. So those were the ones. And I think my mother started me off on reading Agatha Christie when I graduated from children's books, and yes, Famous Five and all that. And then she was, she is an avid reader of crime fiction, and she sort of started me off on Agatha Christie. And I've always liked Miss Marple. I like Poirot and the other detectives that she has, but I have a real soft spot for rather, I want to say batty old women, but batty old women who aren't batty at all. And you will find that in my writing, quite often there will be a batty old woman of some sort, because I have trained all my life to be one. So I have some understanding of the type. I relate very much to batty old women who, however they come at it, things make sense to them. And sometimes they make sense in the world as well, like Miss Marple's. Her ideas do make sense in the world much better than a lot of other characters in the books. So
in a modern day version, would you say somebody like Vera, you know, the crime detective Vera?
Definitely, yes. This kind of cutting through all of the things that would misguide you or draw you away from the central thing, and to go to the heart of the person that you're looking for. And I think Vera is very much a character. I mean, Anne Cleeve's, you know, brilliant. She's one of my favorites. Just started reading her new Matthew Venn series. Excellent. And I think Vera has that kind of clear-sightedness that sees past all the outward dressing into the heart of the person, and that's what tells her this is what's going on here.
And she plays the image of being a bit batty, where really deep down she's very clever.
Oh yeah, it's almost the Columbo thing as well, because although he's not a batty old woman, sometimes he's seen more batty old woman than anyone else. Yes, this sort of rather almost shambolic idea in lots of ways, but really, really sharp underneath. Very clever.
Great.
So yeah, Agatha Christie, short story.
And it's great that you found an Agatha Christie story. Well, not a story, but a collection that you haven't read before. That's like,
I'm sure I will have read some of them, but the first two that I read, I had never come across before, and I just thought, I don't know how I've missed these. They're great.
Right.
So.
Wonderful. So it's
it's
been worthwhile.
Yes, you've allowed me to make a discovery, so thank you very much for that.
Great. So now, Anthony, what's your book number 4?
Number 4, I actually have with me. This is The Ascent of Rumdoodle by W.E. Bowman.
Right. And so what kind of book is that? Because it's one of those books where looking at the cover, you can't really tell, and by the title.
It's a comedy in the manner of Three Men in the Boat, for example. It's written in the 60s, and it's a bit of a pastiche of the mountain climbing memoirs that were becoming in vogue at the time after Hillary had climbed Everest. And it was it's basically about the story of like an expedition to climb Mount Doodle, which is the Rumdoodle, which is the taller mountain than Everest in the Himalayas. Right. But everything just super exaggerates and takes it to its comic extreme. And it was not particularly successful in its time. And then it became very popular from about 2000 when Bill Bryson came across it. And he went on Harriet Gilbert's A Good Read and took it with him, and on the back of that it was republished with a prologue by Bill Bryson. And it's now a little bit more well known, but it had a cult following amongst mountaineers who assumed that W.E. Bowman was a mountaineer because the things he was taking the piss out of were so close to the bone that they assumed he was an experienced mountaineer, but he wasn't. He was something like an electrical engineer from the Midlands, but he just read enough to know. And it's got so many different layers of humor, and a real heart to it, and a simple one that happens very early on. They hire a guide to guide them on this expedition, and they have a pre-expedition briefing in London, and the guide doesn't turn up because he gets lost. And it's just little things like that.
Great, sounds interesting. And you say something a little bit different, so that's good, and some good bits of humour which will be useful when you're stuck on the island. So we're now at book number 5. So what's number 5 for you, Wendy?
Number 5 for me, I'm going to come away from the humour a little bit and to something a little bit more serious. And it's something called, it's a book called The Seal Woman's Gift. I've written it down wrong, and I'm looking at the title thinking that's not the title. It's The Seal Woman's Gift. It's by Sally Magnusson. And the reason I've picked it is because I really do like from time to time to have a really deep dive into historical fiction. And this is historical, but it's not a history that I'm familiar with. And it concerns, it starts in Iceland, and it's in the mid 17th century. And it starts with a village being raided by corsairs, and a lot of the villagers being taken, and you don't know whether they're being sent to slavery, which seems to be the main kind of push. And then there is also possibility of ransom, but these are poor villagers. They don't have a lot. But the King of Norway, there is a suggestion that he would possibly ransom these people, and it's about, you know, a little bit about the politics of the area, but it's mainly about one particular woman. It kind of follows her story, and it's a kind of, somebody said it was a discovery of one human woman's story in these big events that most of us don't actually know anything about. And it's very interesting from all kinds of positions, because they end up, I don't think I'm giving anything away because this happens right at the beginning, but they get taken and end up in North Africa, and it kind of covers slavery when you're not sure if you're a slave or a hostage, and what might happen to you, and whether, you know, how you feel about the people that are left behind and the people who are still with you, and how they react to their situation, and how you feel about how they react to the situation. And it's very beautifully written, and it's layered, it's multi-layered, and it revolves around the seal woman's gift, which is a little bit of mythology, about a woman who comes from the sea and leaves her seal coat and so forth. And there is a woman who claims to be a seal woman in this village, and she makes a prophecy. She's always making prophecies, actually, but she makes a specific prophecy, and it's a kind of big circle as to, you know, what this prophecy might mean, or whether it means anything, or how it comes back. So it's sort of tied up with mythology and the legends, and the stories people tell each other of their history, and about identity, and about one woman, one real woman, because it's based on a real woman. But Sally Magnusson did an enormous amount of research trying to uncover what happened. So there's a whole bit about her husband, which is based on the facts of what happened in this incident. But not much is known of the woman's story. So this is what she's taken and kind of woven that around the historical fact that is known. And she's done it so convincingly. And it's fascinating because it has a view on so many things that are connected today about, you know, where do you come from, who are your people, you know, is it slavery if you kind of consent to it, or you know, if you absorb into a culture, does that make you right or wrong? There's so many layers of this, and what it does to the family, and I don't want to give away anything about the story, which always makes it difficult to tell.
It does.
What it is it's a fabulous read, and there was so many things in it that I didn't know, because I don't know that area of history, and I don't think many people do, to be honest. So that was completely new to me, and she's very well researched. I mean, there's masses of stuff about where her research has come from. So I believe her, you know, I believe that this is, and it's very plausible what happens to this woman and how she might react. But at the heart of it, you know, it's one woman's story of being taken from everything she knows and taken somewhere else to everything she doesn't know, and have the choices she has to make, and the choices she sees other people making, and what happens to her, and how that circle is closed for her. And I think it's wonderful, and I would love to read it again. And it's one of those books I think that you could go back to again and again to read. And there is a story, there's storytelling in the story. It's very kind of, it has this kind of mythical feel to it. Which is wonderful. The idea of telling a story to save your life sort of creeps in now and then, and it's very, very layered, and the writing is beautiful. Really.
Sounds great. Yeah, and as you say, it's you feel like when you're reading a book like that you're learning as well. It's not just, although it's a story, you are learning about cultures and about about different times and things like that. So that's great. That's really good. Now, you mentioned, just going sort of off topic a little for a while, you mentioned about research. So I'm just wondering what kind of research you both carried out, in writing your book. So do you want to go first, Wendy?
Can do, yes. Well, for Sleeping Dogs, I was very fortunate because some of it is animal based. I was very fortunate to be connected through Antony, actually, with a lady who is in a wonderful position to give me lots of veterinary advice as to how things work. So that was lovely. She also has a great sense of humour, so I get some stories from that as well. And also, I don't want to, do any spoilers, but I did have to look at some kind of medical things, and I'm a little bit squeamish. I don't read things that have a lot of blood and gore in. I don't mind if it's kind of imagined, but I don't want it presented to me. And in real life, I'm a little bit, ooh, blood should be inside it. So I'm a little bit squeamish, and as part of our course we actually had to well, we didn't have to, but we had the opportunity to go to to speak to a pathologist in his place of work. And there was somebody else on the course, not Antony, but somebody else, and we kind of hovered at the back going, if they show us anything gory, we're going to either pass out or run. We can't tell which. But it was so fascinating, and there was nothing nasty that we saw. It was so respectful of everything that they did. All credit to them. But just the sheer knowledge that there are a lot of dead people around is kind of quite chilling. But you do, I think, as a writer, you do actually find yourself going to places and seeing things that and people let you in, which is quite nice. You can go and ask really dumb questions. I mean, there was a lot of research I did about how the lifeboats work well, because that became incredible. And you do endless research that doesn't get used as well, because you tend to go down rabbit holes of things where, oh, that's interesting, and then about 3 days later you come and think, well, it's all very interesting, there's no good for my plot to park that somewhere for another one. But it is lovely. People are really lovely in telling you how things work. For the one that I'm writing, I did speak to a scientist, and I can't go into any more details about that, but she was great about telling me things as long as I wasn't going to use it in real life. And that's when I start saying things like, well, leave out a salient fact so that nobody it's if you can imagine it's like having a character make a bomb. I don't want to give the recipe for making a bomb, but I want enough detail for it to be credible that the person would make a bomb. And so you have to kind of know what it is and then choose what to leave out. Because I would hate to think somebody took anything that I wrote and used it as a template for anything. But in crime novels, bad things tend to happen. But research is interesting, but I try not to sideline myself with it, because I will gallop off. I disappear into the Google monster
wormholes.
That, 3 hours have gone by. That was my writing time today, so
but very interesting, and interesting to hear about, as you say, your different contacts and things like that. So what about yourself, Antony?
I had quite a lot to do, because I needed to get animals and flora right. I needed to say I spent a lot of time with maps. I spent a lot of time with history books about Kenya and Tanzania and Malawi and other African countries that didn't end up featuring in the first novel, but there will be in later ones. And novels set there to see how it had been done before, written by African and Western writers, and memoirs particularly, which is quite a handy lead into book 5, because that happens to be one of those.
Right.
This is No Picnic on Mount Kenya by Felice what's his name? Benuzzi, and he was an Italian, and in before the Second World War, Mussolini invaded Eritrea and Abyssinia to try and get an empire for Italy, because all the other countries in Europe had one, so why shouldn't he? And he struggled, and it didn't go very well. They eventually conquered, but then the war broke out, and the British army wandered in and took them both back again, and rounded up more than 10,000 Italian soldiers, who they then imprisoned in a prison camp in Nanyuki in Kenya, which is the town where a lot of my action happens. And the population of the prison camp was greater than the modern day population of Nanyuki itself. But the memoir is from the point of view of one of the prisoners, and it's a bit like The Great Escape, except with an Italian slant, which is he's enjoying the prison camp far more than he was enjoying being in the Italian army. They're getting fed, no one's trying to shoot them. Yeah. It's fantastic, but the only thing he's upset about is he can see from the camp Mount Kenya, the second highest mountain in Africa. It's just a few short miles away, and he lives in the Apennines and he climbs the Alps, and he wants to climb the mountain. So it's about him breaking out the prison camp to climb Mount Kenya, and he then breaks back in again and turns up for roll call the next day. And it is the most wonderful story. His attitude is simply, I don't care about this war. I want to climb that mountain. And off he goes. It's just fabulous. Yeah.
That's amazing. So was all of your research sort of done through, as you say, through memoirs and books and things like that, or did you actually have anyone in the countries where the book was centered that you could speak to?
I've spoken to people who've worked there. I've spoken to people who are from, not directly from Kenya, unfortunately, but from Namibia and countries close enough. In African terms, close enough is like saying, oh, I learned all about the UK by talking to somebody from Russia, because Africa is enormous. But for the animals, I also been to zoos. I had a few keeper experiences, went to Chester Zoo and Knowsley Safari Park, and got up there at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning and fed the rhinos and rubbed lotion into their skin and all that sort of stuff, just to get a real sense of the size of the animals, what they feel like, what they smell like, what they respond to, how they behave.
Great experience, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty lovely. I was listening to an interview the other day, another one that I was listening to, and we were saying on there, it's surprising how when you contact people like you contacted the zoo and what have you, how much information they would give you, and they would rather you go to them asking for information rather than you writing something and it not being correct. So, I think someone was actually saying about, I think it was the FBI, who actually have a department who deal with authors because they want to, because of all the things that have gone over the last few decades, they want to make sure that if anybody does include them in the books, that they get the information correct. So, it just shows you that sometimes if you go along to somewhere like Chester Zoo or whatever and tell them what you're doing, they will quite often welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, very much so. It's been my experience.
Great, and great on the book as well. So it was a nice little connection. That was a good timing that for the book, wasn't it? So we're now on to book number 6. So Wendy, what's your number 6 going to be?
Number 6. Okay, so number 6, I have got something a bit different, I think. This is sort of an autobiography by Sandy Toksvig, who is a great writer as well as everything else that she does, which is great, and also a pretty great person, I think, from everything that I read about her. And she did an autobiography, and it's called Between the Stops, and it's actually a journey from the top of a number 12 bus in London. And on this journey, she regularly took this bus because they lived in Dulwich, and that's kind of one end of the journey. And some of the areas are areas that I do know, and it ends up, I think, in Trafalgar Square or somewhere around there. But at each stop, she kind of gives you a little bit about something unexpected that you wouldn't know. So she will find, there's a building that has a connection to perhaps somebody that you won't have heard of who was big in the feminist movement or did something amazing. And so there's all this sort of lovely stuff about other people in it, which I think is very Sandy Toksvig doing an autobiography. But she said she didn't want to examine her own life sort of chronologically. She wanted to just sort of let it flow a little bit, so she took that. But in amongst all this, as she's storytelling about the places that she's going through or that are just off the bus route, she's also letting you in a little bit to her life and incidents in her life, and her ups and downs, and the thing that I love about it is that I can hear her voice all the time, so very clearly, and you wouldn't mistake it for anybody else's voice, I think. And she's a voice that I could quite happily spend a lifetime on a desert island in Cumbria listening to in my head, because that voice is warm and funny and human and full of erudite. She's full of wonderful facts and obscure ideas, and when I was a great QI fan when Stephen Fry was doing it, and then when they said he wasn't going to do it anymore, I was like, oh, it won't be as good, it'll be awful. And then she started, and I thought, actually, she's kind of got it. And I think she is just the sort of person that lots of people would spend endless time in her company if they were given the chance. She probably would hate every minute of it. but
she's very much a people person, though, isn't she? As you say, the way that she's relating her life to other people. And I wonder how many people could actually write an autobiography based upon a bus journey.
It was a really clever idea, because she doesn't tell her life chronologically at all, but she does tell you things that I was just wondering, because I did mark a little passage which I won't be able to find now. That's just typical. But she did. She said that she just wanted to write something that made it sort of flow. Oh, I think this is the bit, actually. So I've just condensed it a little bit, but she says, the chapters consist of thoughts that occurred to me as I travel, and about places that appealed to me as I stared out of the window. It's not as if my life flashed before me, but much has resurfaced. The solace of books, the love of my dear departed father, the drama and relief of coming out, finding love, my passion for theatre, my drive for justice, an understanding of a kind of loneliness that will forever haunt me, and how I ended up at 60 years old riding a double-decker bus. If none of these things appeal to you, may I gently suggest that you change seats now. Life is too short to read a book that upsets you. On the other hand, if you're ready, let's get going. And then she goes.
That's brilliant. That's really, and it's just fabulous. Even though you've read it, you could hear her voice in it without that's great, really.
And I could listen to her reciting every everything that she ever knew for the rest of her life, and I'd probably be quite happy to listen. So yes, that's great. I'm sorry, I'm sounding like a real fangirl now, aren't I? But I am.
No, great, enjoyable.
She's a bit of an icon.
So what's your number 6, Anthony?
Number 6 is Laidlaw by William McIlvenney, which it was on the reading list for our master's course. And at the end of the first year, all of us were asked to pick the favourite book that we'd read and bring and talk about it for 5 minutes. And one testament to the difference of all the people on the course was that no one picked the same book as anybody else. We had 12 different books. And this is the one I picked because of all the books that I'd heard of but not read. This was the one that stuck in my mind the most. I'd heard of it because Ian Rankin has said several times that I'm aware of that McIlvenney was one of the great inspirations for him and the Rebus series. And the detective in that, Laidlaw, was so fresh and real. And it's one of the greatest difficulties when creating a new detective. Oh, they've got to have a flaw. Oh, are they going to be alcoholics, or they're going to be ex-alcoholics? Or they're going to have a broken marriage, or what? How do we make them different? Because it's all been done. Whereas this is still fresh. I found Laidlaw still real, and he, despite he's inspired so many people, he was still stood alone for me. I really, really enjoyed it, and so that's one of my favourite crime novels.
Is it Ian Rankin that's recently finished one of his books, or am I getting mixed up with something else now?
Oh, I don't know.
I seem to remember hearing something over. There was a book that was unfinished.
It wouldn't surprise me. It would be a natural conclusion.
And I'm sure it was Ian Rankin who's actually finished it off. I might be getting it mixed up. I might be wrong. I might be getting it mixed up with somebody else, but it rings a bell somewhere.
Certainly sounds very credible. Yeah.
Yeah, so great, wonderful. So now we're finally at the last book to go into the suitcase. So Wendy, what's your final book going to be?
My final book is going to combine crime and a little bit of futuristic writing. So I'm a bit of a sci-fi, sci-fantasy sort of buff as well. But this doesn't really come into that, but it is set in the future. And it's a book that I think I was very lucky in that I didn't ever have to read it at school, and I never taught it. So because I was an English teacher for a bit, and I never taught it. So I've never had a school experience of this book, which probably made me love it all the more. And it's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And I found it so powerful on so many levels. And I would still like to reread it again, because I think it reminds us all of how extremist behavior in any direction imposed on others results in tragedy. But underneath that is the character of June, who is the handmaid in The Handmaid's Tale. And she is one of the strongest women I think I've come across in fiction, because most people will probably know the story, but she is abused dreadfully in this society that requires legally for her to be abused in a lot of different ways. And she never loses herself, even though her name is taken from her. She's forced to wear a uniform. She's not allowed to speak to people. She can do very little, but she keeps the core of herself as herself. And it is, in the end, a story of triumph, I think, even though it may not be satisfying. But and she is forced into a position of being, in a war, I suppose, where her own actions are things that would perhaps appall her in her previous life, but it is extreme situation, and what would any of us do given that situation? So yeah, I'd go for that.
Great choice. Something that'd be very well worth reading again, as you say, while you're on the island, and it's a great one to round it all off from your sort of selection. So that's wonderful. Anthony, what's your final book going to be?
It's a bit like the Code of the Worcesters. It's one of many from the author. It's Lee Child's 61 Hours.
Yeah.
I've read all of his novels. I could have picked any of them. I just love him as a writer. I think he's inspirational in all the rules that they teach you at UEA. These are things that make a great novel. He breaks that a lot and you don't notice. He has you gripped from the first chapter. You have to keep reading. You get to the point where you think, this is so breathless now, this is moving so quickly, we must be near the end. Oh my god, we're only a third of the way through. And I'd love to be able to write something that grips the reader in the same way that he's gripped me with his things. And this one, 61 Hours, the counting clock that starts at the beginning and just all the way through, is pulling you through, and you're going, what is going to happen at the end of this? And all the way through you're trying to work it out, and you have that idea, this idea, that, and he's wonderful.
page turning and heart banging. Yeah, so
absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So wonderful collection. Now we've done all your books. Now I'm sure we will get many people who are watching this on video, on YouTube in later days and later weeks, screaming at the screen saying, "Tell us more about your master's course." So I feel I've got to ask you a question. So, did you go? Did you, when you sort of both applied, did you have a book in mind, or did you have to submit a part written book, or do you go with an open mind?
You had to submit a piece of writing, 5,000 words, but they recommended that you emptied your mind and didn't go with something that you'd already been thinking about, so that you could apply the things that you learnt to something new and you got a fresh canvas. I think one or two people possibly did have something in mind, but myself, I think Wendy and others had no idea, and some of us changed what we were working on several times as we went along.
I think when I was first interviewed, which was over Zoom or something similar, by Henry Sutton, who runs the course, who was a very good writer in his own field, and he asked me if I had a book in progress, more or less, and I said, not really, I have some ideas. And he said, just bring an idea, that will be enough.
Wow.
And I think everybody started because we had to write from day one. I think, this is a writing course. You don't get to sit back and think, oh, I won't do any writing today. This is what it's all about. So you have to write, and you have to submit very regularly, sections of writing. But I think very rarely, I'm just trying to think of the 12 of us, did anybody end up with anything like what they started out with? I certainly didn't. I didn't intend to write anything with ghosts. That was a surprise to me. I was writing a completely different story, and my first submission was a party scene. In fact, quite a few of us managed a party scene, didn't we? I don't know why. The party scene long since went together with all the characters in it, including the character that I thought was going to be my investigator. But right in the middle of this party, to my absolute astonishment, a ghost walked through it. And I was like, hang on, what's she doing here? What is my subconscious doing that this ghost walked through it? And that seemed the most intriguing thing about what I was writing. So I kind of let myself go with that. And we had William Ryan as our tutor, as one of our tutors for the first year. And he was writing at the time a book called House of Ghosts, which is a crime book. So he kind of went, oh, a ghost, how interesting. So we had dialogues about ghosts, and it just sort of gripped me. But I think Antony's right. The idea was that you went with some idea, because you need some kind of starting point, but they didn't really want you to come with a sort of plan, because everything is going to change anyway, and they know that, because they're going to expose you to so many different ways of writing, to so many different tutorial methods that make you expand what you're doing and analyze what you're doing and analyze what other people are doing, and this whole process is about taking your what you hope is some natural talent and honing it into skill, and that if you come with something, just trying to fit something into that box when you're going through that process, I think would be really, really hard. Whereas if you have an idea, it could be a character or a place or a storyline, but most of us just found that everything we had to begin with just fell away at some point, and you kind of got to something that you really believed in, that you wanted to write, and that was a wonderful feeling. Yeah,
that's wonderful. So have either of you gone back and looked at that 5,000 word document that you first sent and wondered what to do with it?
Oh.
I think it's quite troublesome when you look at things, and I'm in the process of doing some decluttering at the moment, and I found a whole sheaf of old, written on a very antiquated word processor and then typed out on a probably a daisy wheel printer. I mean, they were that old, stuff, and I was reading it. First of all, I was thinking, did I write this? Kind of, that's weird. And then vaguely it's like, oh yeah, I do kind of think that this was probably me, but you're so far away from it, and you've changed a lot, I think, and even just to go back, I mean, that was 2017, wasn't it, we started? So that would have been kind of spring of 2017 or something when we were applying, or Christmas time that year, earlier that year. And I think that's, you know, for a writer, that's quite a distant past now. But I've still got it all somewhere, because that's why I need to declutter, because I hoard things all the
time. Interesting. And I know you mentioned about, because I said I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in hearing about this, but you mentioned that you had a reading list. So, you know, you're doing the MA over 2 years. You've obviously got a lot of writing to do. Did you have to sort of balance the writing with the reading, or did one sort of follow the other? Or
the first year we did quite a lot of reading and some writing all the time, but the second year was just the writing. Just the writing. So yes, just doing writing. Yes, that was easy. But the pace really stepped up, and we were producing, was it 10,000 words every 4 weeks or something? I don't know.
In the second year we were. The first year was split into 3. There was the theory and practice, which was about the art of writing and structure and plot and characterization, all that sort of thing. Then there was the crime fiction bit, the literary part, where we were reading novels by other people and reading literary analysis of those novels. So that was the most academic bit. And then the third part was the creative writing itself, where we're doing our own writing. And then the second year, it was just the creative writing. It was just our own writing. So all the reading, there's 121 books on our reading list.
Yeah, we didn't have to read them all. I'll just point that out, because there aren't enough hours in the day to read them all. But there was sort of a core list which we had to read, and we all had to give, you know, presentations to the others on what we discovered about them. And, you know, that was the academic bit. We had to write an academic thesis, didn't we, on a topic of our choice to do with crime novels, which was the bit I hated, because I'm not. That wasn't why I went, but it was part. You have to do it for the masters, so I did it. Which you at least get to pick something that interests you. So I think I started out trying to prove that The Big Sleep and Troubled Blood were both hard-bitten novels, and I pretty failed to do that. But it was an interesting journey trying to do it. And that was kind of fun. But the second year is just about the writing, and you are only critiqued by your supervising tutor at that point, although, as Antony said earlier, we did, and I think other cohorts had done something similar. You can't read everything by everybody, there isn't enough time, but you kind of got together with people who were writing the sort of things you'd like to read, and kind of did that, and it split us out quite nicely, didn't it? I mean, we cross-read as well, and certainly as people are coming up trying to either send it out for for consideration or get published, they've got a publishing deal but they want another set of eyes on the latest draft, we still all do that for each other. Because it's a great way to learn. It's amazing sometimes, you know, you pick up something and you think, oh, that's really irritating, and then you realize the reason it's irritating is because you do it as well, so you can go back and cure it in your own writing. It's always useful trying to help somebody else with the editing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great. It gives you a different viewpoint as well, doesn't it? But great to get a bit of insight there. So I'm sorry to keep you going on about that, and but really enjoyed it. So we'll now go on to look at the other things that you're packing away in your suitcase to take with you on the island. Now, we're led to believe that on this fictitious island there is, as they set off the coast of Cumbria, there is a limited supply of electricity. So you get about an hour a day, we're reckoning. So
solar power then?
Well, yeah, we're not too sure how or where it comes from, but yeah, I mean, you're in Cumbria, so. So I don't think solar power is not done out. It's going to happen, but anyway, we won't delve into that too deeply. But you're allowed to take. Let's say you only get the power for an hour a day, so you're allowed to take a CD with you. Now, this can be a music CD, it can be I don't know, it might be a an audiobook on CD or something like that. So first of all, you, Wendy, what CD would you take?
Well, as I predate the CD era, but I know you can get it on CD. I would take this, and if you can read that, I don't know, but it's David Bowie's Hunky Dory.
Great. Yeah, great album.
Love that picture as well.
And on vinyl as well. Yeah.
Vinyl, yes. And I had to go digging for that. This is part of my decluttering. I found, and this is why I've found it, really, because I could have picked almost any of David Bowie's sort of earlier works, because I'm not terribly musical in any way, and I don't know a lot about music. But when I first moved to London, when I was the ripe old age of 18, I think, and I moved to London, and I moved into a shared flat, which was the thing then, rather than, finding somewhere by yourself. So I moved in with a group of strangers of the same sort of age who I didn't know. And one of the people I met there has become a lifelong friend. And she was very much into David Bowie, and I was like, yeah, weird guy. And then she started playing me some of his music, and I really just fell in love with the music. And so it brings back, about 3 years worth of memories for me, anything from that era of David Bowie, which I can just listen to over and over again, sing all the words. And I'm there, I'm that age again. I'm in London. I'm, young, carefree, having a great and it just energizes me, because it brings me back to the, so much in life that was good then and has carried on being good throughout my life. I mean, some of the friends that I made then are still, as I say, lifelong friends, really good friends today. That's why.
And it's like reading a good book. The music can send you in a time travel, can't it? So it's and with David Bowie, there's so everybody knows the regular hit songs, but there's so much else underneath that never gets out. Yeah, great, wonderful, like that one. And what about yourself, Anthony? What's yours going to be?
Mine this is going to be quite small, but we'll have a go. Don't know if you can see that. It's Holly Rogers, and it's All That Fire. It's she's a Cornish singer-songwriter, and she's got a band and plays often with just her and a guitar and a guy on the double bass. That's her second album, which is a few years ago. I came across her completely by coincidence. I was looking for a cover. I was looking for a Martha Wainwright song, a Canadian singer, and looked it up on YouTube and got a cover of it by Holly Rogers. And I thought she had such an amazing voice. I wanted to know more. At the time, she only had one album out, which is called Let Me Be the Shadow of Your Dog, which I loved. And then when she crowdfunded the second one, which I missed, unfortunately, I got involved in crowdfunding the third one. But yeah, I think it's got a lovely voice. And on iTunes, I install, it tells you how often you've played each song and each album. And this one I played over 200 times. So if I've done that and still love it, then it would be perfect accompaniment for an island off Cumbria.
And what a name for an album. What was it? Let Me Be the Shadow of Your Dog.
Yes.
Wow.
that was the first one.
I will be on Spotify later looking for that one. The name of the title of the album is like, that's intriguing, because I've not heard of her. Yeah, definitely check that out. So 2 very interesting choices on the CD. So now, as well as taking a CD along, you can take a DVD. Now, this can be a film, TV series, may even be, a concert or whatever. So, Wendy, what would you choose as a DVD to take?
Well, I thought, on an island in Cumbria, I would be, possibly there would be times when I would feel very cold and it would be very dark, and I would want something that was uplifting and cheerful and kind of gave me that kind of boost that I need to my mood. So I hope you don't think it's terrible, but I chose the DVD of The Greatest Showman, because the music gets me. It is all about things that are dear to my heart, like the inclusion of everybody fairly in life, and opportunity and talent and joy and coming together to help each other. And it has
everything that a good musical should have, I think. And I am very well aware that it is not really the true story of Mr. Barnum. There's a lot of other things I don't like about that, but that I think, and the music, the theme tunes in that, the big show-stopping number,
very uplifting.
And you know, I can't dance, but if I was on my own on an island and that was playing, I'd be there belting it out, and you know.
And you got Antony to dance with.
That would be fab. Bit of fun,
Great. I think somebody else has chosen. I can't remember who it was because I've got a terrible memory as well. But I'm sure somebody else has chosen that before in one of the programs we've done. So a popular choice.
I do actually have a small reference to it in Sleeping Dogs, because I think when I was writing an early draft, the film had just come out. And there was something in it that I thought, oh, that would be quite good. So I kind of just sneaked a little reference into it.
I like that little link back to the book. And Antony, what's your DVD going to be?
I picked a film, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is Charlie Kaufman's script. It stars Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet and Tom Wilkinson and Frodo. Or Elijah Wood, as he's more commonly known. It's a very serious movie, but it has some very touching moments. It's a very complex plot because it's about the elimination of memory, and it's the basic premise is someone who's had a bad breakup can go to this company called Lacuna Inc. and have their memories of their ex-partner removed completely.
Wow.
And then all of their friends get a little card saying, this is what's happened. Don't mention their ex-partner to anyone so that they don't get confused. And on that premise, much confusion arises, but it's very touching. It's very lovely. Some beautiful, beautiful images. And it was not so much would I want to watch it every day. It was if I didn't have the option to watch it, then I think I would miss it. There were so many that I could have picked, but this one I think is one of my all-time favorites. Great,
lovely. And as you say, things like music and films, it's very hard to just choose one, isn't it? You know, and that's, you know, part of a difficulty, isn't it, is just getting to choose the one. But great choice. So the next thing you can pack along to take with you is a food. Now this might just be like a food ingredient, or it may be a food that brings back memories for you, a meal, or you know, or anything like that. So Wendy, what would you take as a food?
Well, again, because it's going to be quite chilly, I think, there, and I want comfort food, and comfort food to me is my mother's fish pie. With gorgeous salmon and prawns and cod and everything in it, in a lovely rich sauce, and that little crunchy topping potato on the top. And she does an amazing.
I can tell you're reliving that now, aren't you? You know,
Mum, I'm coming over.
Yeah, and you can't beat your mum's cooking, can you?
No, and it's always, I think, you know, it's the dish that's made with, I mean, I make a version of it, and quite often if I have people over for a meal, I will make the fish pie, because I think, you know, to me it's about love, it's about sharing, it's about all those things. And if I'm going to be on my own on a desert island, I want to stay in touch with that warmth of you know, this being surrounded and connected to the love on the planet, and you know, love of family. And so thank you, Mum. Fish pie. Put me
great. Wonderful. Got your order in, for Sunday lunch. Yeah, that's great. And what would you choose, Antony?
I take Thai curry paste that I made myself, because we do it twice a week here, and we apply it to anything, you know, fish, chicken, vegetables, pork. But just the scents and the flavors, and the fact that you just slip in those extra 6 chilies and it'll keep you warm on a winter's day on a Cumbrian coastline. But the gallon lemongrass and the shallots and chilies and coriander and
Great. There's definitely a theme running along these lectures, isn't there? Keeping warm and cozy, and it is
desert islands, you know, somewhere in the tropics. You may have got a different thing, but you know, we're going with the proper theme here, and we have to take the conditions into account.
Great choices, great choices. So we come to the final choice, which is probably the biggie, because it's just one of them. What do you take? It's a luxury item. So what did you choose, Wendy?
Well, I agonized over this because it's kind of odd, you know, do I say, oh, it wouldn't fit in the suitcase, but, you know, can I have a bed, because if I have a good night's sleep, then I can face anything the next day. And if I have a bad night's sleep, that's a whole different ball game. But then I thought, it won't fit in the suitcase. This could be a real problem. And then I thought, can I take my tablet, even with no internet, you know, can I take my tablet for writing? And then it was like, oh, but the power won't be there, and that'll be a problem. So I have to go back saying, you know, can I have as big a stack as I'm allowed of lovely notebooks and pencils with a sharpener, because if all else fails, I will tell myself stories.
Yeah.
if I can't read any, I will be telling myself stories. So
that's a great choice. We did actually have somebody choose a camper van.
Get that in. Okay.
Didn't quite fit in a suitcase, but yeah. But I do like the choice of because you can write your own stories and then put them to one side, and then a year or two later get them and read them, and it's like reading new books. So so great choice. And what would yours be, Anthony?
Well, you can tell we're both writers who went on the same course, because I picked exactly the same thing. Though it was a notebook and pen rather than a pencil.
Yeah.
I tend to write with fountain pens in notebooks, but yeah, just the same, for the same reasons, because you have just random thoughts and you need to note them down, and they may never be used again, but they may be the germ of an idea that becomes something else later on. If you don't have something right next to you to write it down, when you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking, oh my God, he did that with the umbrella, by 4 a.m. you'll have forgotten it completely, unless there's a notebook next to your bed.
Do you both do that? Do you both wake up in the night and think of something and have to scribble it down, or are you quite regimented in that it comes to you during the waking hours?
I don't usually wake up with it, but when I wake up in the morning, quite often there is stuff in my head that I need to write down before I do anything else, before I get out of bed or do anything else, because it does escape, it evaporates very quickly. So yeah, it's a good place for the subconscious to sort out all those little quirks that you can't actually work out how this bit of plot is going to work, and then you kind of drift along, and it's like, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I rarely wake up in the middle of the night with that idea, but quite often as I'm falling asleep, as the rest of the world disappears, suddenly something will leap into my mind, and I'll leap up in bed and go, right, I'll be back.
Lovely.
Great. Well, that's a wonderful point to end on, isn't it? About the ideas. So just before we finish, and I've just realised the time. I can't believe it's 20. We were like over an hour and a half into. Where's that time gone? What was I saying earlier about a long show? So I'm sorry to have kept you both so long, but perhaps you can just finally give, for anyone who's joined, you know, when they're watching this on YouTube or whatever, and they join it late, perhaps you can just give us a reminder on your book, on where to contact you, and you know, maybe your like social media presence, things like that. So do you want to go first, Wendy?
Yes, sure. So this is my book, Sleeping Dogs by Wendy Turbin. It's available through Amazon as a paperback or an ebook. It's available through hobeck.net, who are my publishers. And if you want a signed copy, then, or a mug, even if you ask nicely, you never know, then do ask them, and they will arrange that as well. And other ebooks types are available if you want them. I can be contacted. I have a Facebook page under my name, because I believe in being very hard to find. I'm on Twitter at Wendy at the Sea, because I live by the seaside, because I am quite lucky in that respect. And you know, please do come and chat. It would be lovely. So I'm wendyturbin.com on on wherever, www.wendyturbin.com.
Internet, yeah.
I'm terrible at this. I'm terrible at this. Anyway, just Google me. You'll find me. Do come and talk to me. I'm always happy to talk, because you can tell from this. And if you like murder mysteries, a little bit of supernatural, a little bit of humour, and a little bit of a dark heart in there. It's not all fun, but there's a laugh or two along the way as well. Then please have a go.
Which we all need, don't we? We need the darkness, but we need the light and the humour. So that's great. And Anthony, do you want to do the same thing?
Yeah, I've actually found a decent photo this time. See that? There you go.
Yeah, nice and clear, that one.
Hunted, Antony Dunford. It's available on Amazon, Kindle and paperback. It's available at hobeck.net. And if you want a signed copy, drop a note in there. My website's antonydunford.com. And my Twitter handle is Anthony_Dunford, at Anthony_Dunford. And yeah, if you want, like Africa thrillers, women kicking the ass of anyone who gets in their way, then Hunted is hopefully worth a read.
Wonderful. Definitely both books sound like well worth a read, so I'm sure you will get lots of people scribbling them down and making a note. So thank you both very much this evening. Really enjoyed it. The video will be available on YouTube tomorrow, so I will copy you into that so that you can so you can both sort of share that with your readers. And I will, just as I say, end the evening by thanking you very much, and we will look forward to your future books.
And thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.